Yeah, good morning, all. My name's Fraser Lee. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning, just to and give us the opportunity to take you through some of the thoughts we have around Agile, DevOps, and ITSM, and how they can combine together to give you a more controlled ecosystem. Just in the first slide here, the reason why hopefully you joined the session is we're going to talk about Agile and DevOps practical insights, and then IT service delivery and guidance of moving from what's a traditional IT service delivery model to one that supports Agile and DevOps, and some key things to think about when you're moving on your journey and some of the challenges that you might face. So what we'll be covering. So why are we doing this? Why are iCore hosting a webinar on this subject? What is ITSM, Agile and DevOps? Hopefully I'll probably be telling you how to suck eggs in some of these, but I think it's important to just explain the three before we move on to how we can try and optimize them. Yeah, and you see there's the next section on Agile DevOps and ITSM optimizing and improve. How do you get there? Sort of recommendations and how you could make that journey, where you could end up, what it might look like when you get there, and some of the challenges you'll face. And then we've got a section on conclusions about things you need to be aware of and take into consideration when you're making this sort of change, not just this sort of change, but any sort of business change. And then some of the services that we can support you with at iCore along that journey. And then, as Naeem mentioned, a question and answer session. So without further ado, I think I'll get into the presentation. So why are we doing this? Well, a lot of organisations have a service management which is ITIL version 2 and version 3. Some moving to version 4, but really the vast majority is still at version 2 and version 3. They've got SIAM structures as part of that ITIL service framework to govern multiple suppliers, both internal and external, and using waterfall project delivery as an approach to delivering IT, in this context, IT projects. So there is a view that this does not, or this versus the new world of digital technologies, rapid delivery and speed and quality. And hopefully today we're going to give you an idea and an overview of how we think that they can combine to provide a controlled ecosystem for the quality delivery of applications and products where appropriate. So ITSM, as I say, I'm sure a lot of the audience here understands what ITSM is and has been involved with it for a number of years. But this is the sort of iCore definition of ITSM, and is very similar to other definitions that you would see. It's the implementation and management of quality IT services, meeting the business needs of the customer, and performed through appropriate mix of people, process, and technology. And already those who are familiar with Agile and DevOps will see that's complementary sort of underpinning philosophies there with ITSM that would align with Agile and DevOps. So let's move on to Agile and DevOps. So what is Agile? So Agile is effectively a delivery mechanism for in this world and recently for software applications and products. It goes way back further than that and has an engineering manufacturing background, as a lot of these methodologies do. But in the context of this webinar and what I suspect a lot of the audience would be looking to deploy it is in software and applications and products associated with digital technologies and digital services. So it's got a manifesto, which is individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to changeover following a plan. So you can see there why it is agile. It's agile in definition, really dictionary definition as to how it delivers and its delivery mechanisms and the controls and the objectives of its delivery mechanisms. But that over and above that, it's supported by some Agile principles you can see there: focus on business need, deliver on time, collaborate, never compromise on quality, building incrementally, very, very, very important. Develop iteratively, very important. Good communication and demonstrate control. So again, if you look at ITSM and Agile, you can see there are some complementary principles and complementary philosophies that allow you to combine, would allow you to combine those, and they have a combined delivery process, delivery methodology combining both of those. And here is the standard sort of delivery engine for Agile. It moves from into feedback from internal stakeholders and customer stakeholders to create a product backlog, and then a plan sprint cycle, time incremented, normally 2 to 4 weeks, a review and a retrospective, and ultimately delivering a product increment. There are a number of complementary support methodologies that can be used within the Agile lifecycle: Scrum, Kanban, Six Sigma, and Lean, as you can see there. We won't be focusing a lot on those today. It's purely around Agile itself as a principle. And then we move on to what is DevOps. So again, lots of different descriptions as to what DevOps is. This is the sort of iCore definition of DevOps. It's a hybrid, as you can see there, hybrid of development and operations. Concept aims to bring these two areas together. Value of importance of communication, collaboration, and integration between development and service and operational staff. And although there's a number of descriptions, this is the sort of standard life cycle for your DevOps delivery. So you've got development straight through from testing, monitoring, deployment, and into operations, and underpinned by continuous integration and collaboration. Again, you can see the consistencies of philosophy and principle across the three: ITSM, Agile, and DevOps. So, Agile and DevOps, two cogs in your IT machine. So how do you optimize this model? So to optimize and improve the model, it's a traditional model. It's a model you probably recognize. Agile and DevOps is mentioned consistently and frequently in the same breath. But a lot of organizations see it as a relay race. So you have Agile handing over to DevOps, and then they do a bit of development, and then they deliver into operations. So there can be, and there is, duplication and certainly methods of delivery, although possibly using different technologies and for a different aim, but certainly testing, integration testing, monitoring, feedback are all consistent within Agile and DevOps. And if you treat it as a relay race where Agile hands over to development, you're potentially duplicating effort, which obviously impacts delivery time, efficiency, and productivity. So lots of organizations will do a relay race rather than a sprint, and you'll recognize that if you're from the Agile methodology. So our recommendation is to enhance and optimize to the next level with Agile and DevOps, start them both at the same time. Develop a hybrid Agile DevOps team structure. Redesign and integrate Agile and DevOps management and delivery and governance models. Involve DevOps in strategy, design, planning, and Agile delivery, and include Agile in processes, procedures, and tool sets associated with DevOps. So effectively, you start off at the beginning of your product or application development lifecycle with Agile and DevOps in step, and if you develop and you design your workflow in an effective way, you can cut out the duplication of effort that does present itself when it's a relay race or a handover from Agile to DevOps. It's not easy, it's not simple, and it's the same development in Agile is not necessarily the same development you do within DevOps, but there's absolutely an opportunity to look at combining the two and rationalising the two and cutting out the duplication of effort. So that's one benefit. Other benefits of the approach are it streamlines the end-to-end process, making it more efficient and productive, just what I've been talking about there. The number of exceptions are reduced due to more effective and integration and testing processes. But I think the big element of exceptions are that they're identified and resolved early in the development life cycle. So rather than the development or the ops people picking up exceptions prior to deployment, and passing it back to possibly the agile life cycle to revisit and rework, you will find that there's more chance of finding it during the early in the life cycle if both Agile and DevOps are working in tandem. And collaboration and communication are improved simply because of if you have developed and redesigned your governance and delivery models, and you have involved everybody in the strategy, the design, and the planning, then the collaboration and communication is embedded from the very beginning of the process. And it ultimately improves the quality of the application or product developed and deployed. And that the definition of quality there is a functioning, performing product delivered on time to your clients and to your business. So how can you further improve that methodology? Well, the missing cog in this wheel from an iCore perspective is ITSM. Have to be careful with ITSM. It has been around for a number of years. It can become an industry in itself, and if you are going to implement ITSM and then combine and integrate ITSM with your Agile DevOps methodologies and life cycle, you have to be careful that you do complement it and you don't introduce any delays or any bureaucracy that is not required. So I think the thing to keep in mind about ITSM and introducing that cog is just enough control, just enough process, and just enough structure is required to complement the Agile DevOps life cycle. So how do you get there? So this webinar really focuses on people and processes. I think if we looked at technology is a whole other webinar. iCore actually do provide a service that we can come in and help you to determine the best tool set for your ITSM, your Agile and DevOps. But again, it's another hour or another webinar for that. We're really going to focus on people and processes for this. So as with any business change, you have to initiate your project, finalise against agreed project documentation, understand what your goals are and what your future operating model is going to look like. Then define your existing organisation. It's really important that you understand what your organisation looks like before you start any change programme. A lot of organisations think they understand what their organisation looks like, but ultimately it may be that they understand their element of it. Once you start to look and you start to analyse, you always find things that you don't know, and it's really important that definition process is carried out, or due diligence is carried out before anything else. Define your current state. So from a processes and people perspective, or a process perspective, really for this box is define what your processes look like. Try and understand whether you have an adequate set of processes, how mature they are, how effective they are, how productive they are, and analyse that current state to understand those outputs. And then define the future state. So what's B going to look like? What's B going to look like? And create an action plan that will allow you to get from A to B. Now, iCore can help you with that. We've helped a number of organisations, certainly from the defined processes state through to create the action plan, and actually we can help you implement the action plan. We've been asked by a number of clients to help them implement some of the findings that we've found or the action plan that we've developed. And we have a standard process which is very mature and has been used over a number of years, so around definition, preparation, assessment, analysis and feedback. And you can see there some of the detail around the different elements and the different work streams associated with that, around overall scoping, document review, observations, evidence-based, and presentations and recommendations and improvements, which really aligns to the create the action plan for the business change below. And more specifically, we can look at your Agile DevOps environment and also any service management that you have associated with Agile and the DevOps environment. A number of organizations have got what we say is a traditional ITSM service framework, which does focus on service and ops, but there is an element of service management that can be dedicated to Agile and DevOps. We talk about that later. But for this slide, we have quite a mature tool set for measuring your Agile and DevOps maturity along with your service management. You can see there it runs through from culture and organisation, strategy, right straight through to information and reporting and the different steps in the life cycle. So both of those services, the definition through to the action plan and the specific analysing the current state of your Agile and DevOps, and actually your ITSM is something that we as an organisation specialise in. And you could end up here. So let's talk about people and teams. So here you've got what you would see as being the traditional Agile and DevOps makeup of the traditional Agile and DevOps team. So what can you do to integrate ITSM into those teams? Well, you can bring in what is determined as an Agile service manager, very similar to an ITSM service manager, but really an Agile advocate, an Agile evangelist. And just a bit more detail on the Agile service manager. What do they do? Well, they manage Agile processes within the broader ITSM framework. A lot of organizations have a separate setup. Where they have ITSM, they have a separate set of processes for Agile, or they have the Agile component built into their existing processes, and the service manager is the manager and the coach and the coach of those processes. Adapts Agile practices to ITSM process design. So, I mean, as it says there, any processes that are designed for the Agile DevOps environment, have to have the Agile and DevOps principles embedded in them to make them effective and to complement that development life cycle. And ensures ITSM processes reflect Agile values from initial design through to CSI. So very similar to the previous bullet point, but the difference here is that the shared philosophy of continuous service improvement within Agile DevOps and ITSM. That the Agile service manager ensures that they are reflected in any of the processes and any of the approaches within the ITSM world associated with Agile and DevOps, and then improves the collaboration between DevOps, Dev and Ops. That is embedded in any processes that are developed. Take an iterative approach to process design. Process design, again, can be a bit of an industry within the ITSM world, so it's important that the processes are designed. When they're designed from the ground up, they're designed to be maintained, improved, or added to in an incremental and efficient way, and streamline existing ITSM processes. As I say, organizations will have a mixture of maybe separate processes or Agile and DevOps processes embedded in the ITSM processes. The Agile Service Manager will ensure that that's done effectively within the existing ITSM service framework. And improve the velocity of process teams by managing the process sprint. And I'll give you an idea of what the process sprint is in a second. And that allows, along with Agile and DevOps, that allows the ITSM and to facilitate and support the development life cycle to meet the customer requirements faster. So what's a process sprint? Well, you probably recognize the diagram. Really, the process sprint and the way of developing Agile ITSM processes follows the same life cycle as the design life cycle for applications and products, and the easy you go from process planning straight through to delivery, and then a sprint review and sprint retrospective. And an easy way of remembering the process sprint is really just to replace product with process, and you're there. So the processes. So there's your two cogs, your Agile and your DevOps cogs. And the objective really for this webinar is to give an idea on how to integrate those and what it might look like. And this is where you may end up. If you have a look at what you do within the Agile environment and within the DevOps environment, you have a strategy, you decide a strategy. ITSM has a service strategy section. You design an application, you design a product. Again, ITIL has that and ITSM has that embedded. Transition, transition is integral to both Agile and DevOps, and that can be that, and ITSM can be complementary and add some control around that, and then into service operations. Again, that's the ultimate aim and objective and goal of the Agile DevOps lifecycle is to, in some respects and in some applications, to deliver successfully into operations, and ITIL does that as well. And then you can underpin all of the life cycle with your standard ITIL processes, release and deployment, service validation and testing, config management, change management, and continuous service improvement. You will have to modify any existing processes to effectively support Agile and DevOps. And the decision is to be made as to whether you componentize it within your existing ITSM organization, or you develop another set of processes and procedures specifically for Agile and DevOps. But just remember, though, just enough control, process, and structure is what you need to make any integration successful. So challenges you face on that journey. So challenges, culture. You'll need evangelists and visionaries to make it work from a senior level, but throughout the organisation, really, to make any change as to how you change your Agile DevOps and integrate ITSM. You'll need evangelists and visionaries. You'll need people who are really enthusiastic about the change and can evangelise and promote the change. Organisational structure. Your structure will be typically siloed with some integration via process and function, but your roles and responsibilities and team dynamics will be a challenge. You will need to look at that and look at how that will change and how that will need to look at in the new world. And then budget and finance. The sort of a waterfall cost model for project delivery or process delivery or any development is different in the Agile and DevOps world than it is within the waterfall world. So your engagement with finance will be different, the cost models will be different, and that will be an education and development, not just for the Agile DevOps folks, but also for the finance folks. Expertise, you need to bring in different expertise. You'll need some coaches around Agile to help coach the DevOps folks and also help coach the ITSM folks and on how to implement and how to deliver the Agile DevOps ITSM model. And some of the technical elements around automation are a challenge. To get the best out of any Agile DevOps delivery model, you really need to look at automation. Without automation, it becomes less effective. Automation is key, and finding architects and engineers to help you do that will be a challenge, or even training existing staff will be a challenge. And then communications. Communications will change as your culture changes, as your organisation changes, as your integration with finance and actually security also changes. Your communications and your frameworks and methodologies will change. Lots of technologies around now that allow you to do that, but a lot of organisations, certainly with the communication within IT and IT to the business, will change quite significantly. And probably one of the biggest challenges, along with culture, is legacy. You'll have to in the short term, working and probably a sort of in a bimodal way, we call it, legacy, delivering legacy into a legacy environment and delivering new products into a new product environment, and ultimately managing your legacy environments and your processing your tool sets out and moving to an environment that supports, you know, Agile and DevOps combining with ITSM and that delivery life cycle. And that can be quite a long, technically difficult journey to take, because you're having to ensure that as you transform and you transition, you don't actually impact work in progress. So conclusion. So things to look for during any change in your Agile, DevOps and ITSM environments, and really any can really be applied to any sort of business changes. Ensure you know what you have before you decide on what you need to change. So again, going back to the previous slide, define your organisation, define your processes, define what you look like before you decide on what you need to change. Seek advice. iCore are employed on quite a lot of occasions to provide a different set of eyes on any changes. I've been asked to do that recently with a client, and it can be quite illuminating for clients when you have that independent view of what your organisation looks like and some of the challenges that you might have during your transition or your transformation. Plan and plan again. It's planning 101. You start to decide that you have your initial idea of how you're going to go from A to B, but you have to review that on a daily, weekly basis, and make sure that you're taking into account any changes within the business, and plan again, and change again if required and if appropriate. Engage employees from across the business. That's why communication is key, and some of the communication frameworks and methodologies may have to be modified. It's really key that you keep your people and your employees on board with any change, and you keep them motivated with any change and involved in any change. It's a different dynamic if somebody thinks something is being done to them, than they think that they are part of a constructive, productive change, organisational change, and that they have influence in how that change is defined and implemented. And know your limitations. At the beginning, it's important to understand whether you have the right people to make this change, have the right skills in place. But more importantly, and again, a recent challenge that a client of iCore had was, do your people have the time to implement this change? They're obviously employed to do a day job. The fact that you're looking to change the organisation may be that you have some issues around lack of proactivity, some exceptions with delivery, and taking people out of that environment may cause you more problems than solves your problems. So you have to really understand whether you have to embed or integrate an external organisation or another function to help you make this change. And then communicate. Communicate is really important. It's really important that everybody's kept up to speed with how the change is going, the challenges with the change, what's happening to them today, what's going to happen to them tomorrow. And it needs to be easy for them to look at. Again, they've got a day job. It needs to be easy for them to consume and to feedback on and interact with. And embrace the change. So once you start, don't stop. Keep the momentum going. Keep the change momentum going. Doesn't matter how difficult it gets. You have to keep moving and keep overcoming the challenges. And there are ways of doing that as you develop your project plan. And don't forget, the ultimate goal is customer satisfaction. Obviously, as an organisation, and IT is key to ensure you get the budget you need year on year is profit and revenue. But profit and revenue is ultimately driven by customer satisfaction. So what can iCore provide you support on your journey. So we can do a service and value maturity assessment. So we have a number of tool sets that will give you a good idea, backed up by industry standards, on where you are from an ITSM, Agile and DevOps maturity perspective of your processes, how they are standalone and how they are integrated into other processes and into the business. It utilises the CMM maturity rating 1 to 5 as part of an evidence-based assessment. That's backed up by the maturity, an institute which has been integral in developing best practice process maturity for decades, and they have a rating level 1 to 5. We can give you more details on that rating 1 to 5 from a process maturity perspective, and part of the output of any maturity assessment is a roadmap of how you can move through from level 1 through to level 5. Not a lot of organisations are at level 5. Normally sits around level 4, but we can give you advice and guidance on how you get through those maturity levels. So the assessment provides a view of the alignment of current IT service management approaches, both ITSM, pure ITSM and Agile and DevOps, current working practices and cultures, highlight strengths and improvement opportunities, and as I mentioned before, leads to a roadmap that sets out and prioritises the things that you need to be successful.